We have been going through an incredibly difficult time at the moment. We have my daughter who is, as I've already discussed, very, very school avoidant at the moment. In fact, she's outright school refusing. We've had a couple of trips to hospital due to her mental health, and my wife's mental health has been struggling and her physical health has been struggling. We've got the rest of the family to think of, my son and myself, and it gets so caught up that we often put ourselves last as carers. Now, I've spoken about this many times before on this channel, and I've spoken about the importance of self-care as parents and carers. If we're not taking care of ourselves, how can we be taking care of those around us? If we're not going to be at our best for ourselves, we're not going to be at our best for them. And there's a thing I say, it's not selfish to be self-caring, but it can feel that way. As we've been going through this challenging time, something I've noticed is some bad coping habits that I tend to go into. They're things that I would recommend anybody else not do. And what I mean by that is I tend to withdraw. I withdraw into myself and I avoid my friends and people who can help me. Not because I don't want their support, but because I feel an element of guilt about reaching out for support myself. It's the ultimate hypocrisy, if you like, because I spend so much time telling others it's not weak and it's not something that you should avoid doing. In fact, there's a courage to reaching out to others. Yet here I am in a situation where my mental health's been struggling with all the pressure that we've got. My well-being is at risk. And I haven't been reaching out to friends. And the guilt there is because I don't want to burden somebody else with my issues. I ended up speaking to one of the awesome people at Parental Minds just about where things were at, because they'd seen previous videos, reached out to me and said, how are you doing? I do a lot of work with Parental Minds. I'm there for support for those people, and it's an awesome, awesome thing. We were discussing it, and I was saying, it's a weird thing, and I noticed this about myself. I'm withdrawing and I'm not reaching out to others. And we started to explore what was behind that. It occurred to me that there are things that we do subconsciously, I guess, that we don't really pay attention to. And yet it gets to a point where you realise you need this stuff and you've been avoiding it. And I think I'm sort of reaching that point. And as we were discussing it, we got into this sense of guilt. And there is a sense of guilt there about reaching out to others. I don't want to burden people with my issues, people who've got enough going on in their lives. And my brain tells me, well, we don't want to burden them with that. I kind of project my own fears onto somebody else. Now, if I was in, and I have been in that situation, even though I've got a point where I'm struggling myself, the ability to help others is actually really cathartic. And maybe I'm actually robbing somebody of that opportunity to be there for me. And I hadn't thought of it that way. It reminded me of it was a Sesame Street sketch that they did.
Hey, you know what happened to me? I broke my vacuum cleaner. So I sent it off to the repair shop to get it fixed. But I need to clean my apartment, and so I really need a vacuum cleaner, So right here in this house here lives a very good friend of mine, Herbert Birdsfoot, and he's got a vacuum cleaner, So what I think I'll do is I was going to knock on the door here and ask Herbert Birdsfoot if I can borrow his vacuum cleaner. But wait a minute. You know what? Gee, I just happened to think. Right about this time every day, old Herbert Birdsfoot takes a bath. I bet he's inside right now in his nice warm tubby, soaping his ears, And then there's going to be this knock on the door, and he's going to come to the door, and then I'm going to ask to borrow his vacuum cleaner, and he's going to be real mad, I bet, because I made him get out of his nice warm tubby and come to the door all wet and sudsy. He'll probably even catch a cold. Wow, yeah. You know what? He might not even loan me his vacuum cleaner. A person who makes him come, out of his nice warm tubby and catch a cold. Wow. He probably, you know what? I bet he would think that I probably wouldn't even return his vacuum cleaner to him. But I would. Of course I would. But he would think I wouldn't. Matter of fact, he'd probably go around telling all my friends not to loan me anything. He'd probably tell them that I wouldn't return it, He'd probably say how unreliable I am, and that people shouldn't loan me anything. And people would stop loaning me things, and matter of fact, they probably wouldn't even speak to me anymore. Why, I used to have a lot of friends before that rotten old Herbert Birdsfoot started shooting off his mouth.
Oh, hi, Ernie.
Oh, yeah? Well, if that's the way you feel about it, you can just keep your rotten old vacuum cleaner. So there.
And it's that kind of thing. I think for myself, I end up projecting those fears of I don't want to be a burden to someone else onto them, even though they probably don't feel that. And I'm actually taking away an opportunity for someone to either repay a favour that, I've done in a way, if I've been there for them, but also I'm robbing them the opportunity to understand. And they don't know why I'm being a bit more withdrawn, where I'm not messaging maybe as much, maybe I'm not talking as much. Aside from that, it's a remarkably unhealthy thing for me. After that conversation I had with the lady from Parental Minds, I felt so much better. I just felt relieved for having kind of got all these things off my chest, because it feels selfish. My daughter's going through a horrible time at the moment. My wife is going through a very difficult time at the moment. It affects our son because obviously he's around for all this and he can see it, and he's 8, he's 9 in a few weeks, but he doesn't understand really what's going on. He's not old enough to be able to process this stuff in an adult way, I guess, because he's 9. And being able to share it was something that I found really cathartic, and was able to release some of that pent-up tension. And it wasn't received in a way that was, here's Duncan again, moaning away. It's not like that, because I guess I don't do that much anyway. But the reality is that people want to be supportive. I've talked about it on this channel so many times, the 5 stages of grief that I went through, definitely, when it came to my daughter's diagnosis and working out what was going on with her and how we could support her. I talk about the fact that the 6th step is advocacy and celebration. And I really believe that. I really believe we go from this stage of just being accepting of neurodivergence, and we get to the point where we are celebrating it and we're actively trying to make the world a better place because of it. And people want to advocate. People want to step into that role. Mental health is the same. It's something that affects so many people. I guarantee there's not one person tuning into this who hasn't either experienced mental health issues themselves or knows someone who has gone through the same. Mental health seems to be something that's on the tip of everyone's tongues, and it's difficult because it's something that can't be seen. I've started to understand what masking must be like for my family. Like my daughter and my wife both mask quite heavily when they're in social situations. And I'm kind of doing the same thing. It's like you kind of paint on the smile, even though you're feeling really exhausted inside, so stressed. My mental health is not in the best place. It's something that happens. It's called carer burnout. It happens a lot to people. I'm kind of in that situation, but I'm not quite there, if that makes sense. I'm edging towards that, and I have to be more aware of it. And what I'm finding is that even though I'm feeling this inside, when I head out, someone says, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm great, no worries." Or I might make a joke, plodding on, that kind of stuff. But I don't, I'm painting on a smile. I'm acting more happy and content and at ease than I really am inside. And it's exhausting. And when I get home, you're like, oh. And that can just be from going to pick up my son from school, or it can be just heading to the shops and you bump into someone. But you find it's really draining. Like I'm starting to see from my own perspective what that feeling of constantly masking must be like, nowhere near at the same level as is experienced by my family. But it's something that's helping me to relate. And I do think that when we project those feelings on others, like Ernie was doing in that sketch from Sesame Street, we're judging people in a way that they don't deserve to be judged. We're assuming too much. We're taking away an opportunity for them to feel like they're contributing and wanting to help. It's not selfish of me. And it's one of those things that you can almost preface. I'm going through a bit of a rough time, and let the invitation come. If they're saying, "Hey, I'm here, do you want to talk? Is there something I can do?" Then that opens the door. If they don't say that, then that's a signal that, okay, these aren't the right people for me to be talking to about this. People want to help so much, especially if you're somebody who's helped other people. They are more motivated and more eager to be supportive back. It's like, hey, you've done so much for me. Let me do something for you. Let me repay that somehow. It's not even about being repaid, but I'm realizing I'm taking away that opportunity for them to shine in those moments. Being open and honest about where I'm at with the right people. And trust is a big thing. Trust is something you earn and something that you don't just dole out necessarily. You don't trust a complete stranger with your bank details, do you? Trust is something you earn. It's something that you develop over time with relationships with people. It's been interesting. We've been watching The Traitors, and it's interesting seeing people who have no idea who each other are And they're starting to learn, do I trust this person? Can I trust this person? Is this person trustworthy? Oh, they've compromised my trust. You're watching the series one of the UK one, and there's a young lady on there called Alex who goes in, and she's got her boyfriend in there, but they haven't revealed it to anyone because they didn't want to be seen to be in some kind of a partnership that could affect an alliance that could affect the game. But he ends up blurting it out, and suddenly everyone's like, oh, they've lied to me. We can't trust them. And it completely shattered the trust that anybody had already built up. And it was such an interesting thing to watch, is that that one little thing in a game called The Traitors, that people react so badly when that trust is broken. So trust is something that you earn. It's something that we develop. And as I move into the people that I trust, I need to, it's almost like it's a gift, I think, being able to say, I trust you this much that I can share this part of me that's inside that I'm really struggling with, that I don't want the world to know about necessarily. The details of it and getting into the nitty-gritty of it. And what I found was by talking about it, I was sorting things out in my own head in many ways. And one of the things that really sort of struck it, it's something I said, but it was picked up on by this lady. She really honed in on it because it said, I know there will be an end to this. We've been through challenging and difficult times, many, many of them. I think when you're a parent and carer to a neurodivergent child, especially a PDA, you go through periods of real difficulty. And that's not a slight on my daughter. That's not meant to make her feel bad in any way. That's just the reality that there is a deeper stress and a deeper concern, and it's a love that's there. She gets very annoyed at the moment that we're sort of hovering around because we've got to keep a close eye on her. And there's part of me that wants to go, I need to give her total space, and I need to let her feel that. But the reality is, I need to keep her safe as well, because we don't know what she'll do in a situation where she's left too alone, or if we're not at least monitoring. So it's not her fault that she's in that position, and it's not her fault that she's put that on us. That's just the way the world is. That's just the way our lives are. But we've been through difficult times before, and we've got through them. There is a light at the end of every tunnel. I do genuinely believe that. And it's not always an oncoming train. I know that this period of challenge and difficulty will come to an end. There'll be a time of peace, and then probably something else will crop up, and we'll have to be able to deal with that, and we'll go through the cycle again. It's there, and I'm aware of it, and it's keeping my focus on that. I don't think I'd have remembered that if I hadn't been having that conversation, and it was allowing me to reflect a lot of the advice that I give to so many other people when we're in these conversations, when I'm out supporting other parents and carers, and I'm trying to be that guy that's supporting and caring for others. I give this advice, and it's not selfish to be self-caring, and you do need to talk, and we do need to get it out there, and it's well known that it's one of the most effective ways of dealing with mental health, if we can open up and talk about it with people who aren't judgmental and people who aren't going to put a stigma of mental health. I don't have any mental health conditions per se, but life sometimes gets very difficult, and it can take us by surprise. I remember hearing that they call it points in a year, that you've got so many points in a year that you can handle before you're going to hit some kind of depression or burnout or something like that. Things that rank at the highest are obviously deaths in the family, breakdowns of relationships, moving house. I've been in this situation before where in 1 year I had all three hit me at once. Now, they're worth 100 points each. So I'm on a 300 points out of 100 points that you can cope with in a year. It's going to affect your mental health. We are all going to experience those times. We're all going to experience times of grieving. We're all going to have loss in our lives. So taking that step back and seeing that I need to be in the right place, because my wife said it to me yesterday. She says, I need you to be here. I can't do this without you. It wasn't a thing to put pressure on, but it was a reminder that I can't make silly decisions or random decisions that are going to affect my family. I have to put them first, and that does mean that I come down the list. Being further down the list doesn't mean I don't have to take care of myself, and I don't need to prioritise my own well-being in the process. And it's one of those things, isn't it? If I had a broken leg, I'd be straight down to the hospital, I'd be getting it x-rayed, getting it fixed up, put in a cast, and letting it heal. And I think because mental health goes on so much inside, it's not visible on the outside. It's something that we kind of repress and we try and push on, but that's where burnout comes from. Being able to take a moment, sit down with a friend and have a chat and talk about it really, really has helped over the last few weeks. And I feel like I'm in a better place for being able to do that. As I was talking to this lady from Parental Minds and we were talking about this stuff, she relayed a discussion she'd had with a friend of hers who was going through a really difficult time. And she herself didn't want to go in this, every time she talked to this person, it was, how you doing, letting this person talk to them. But this person had got to a point where it was the same conversation in a way. She wanted to know how this lady was doing. It was reciprocal, and actually in her being able to share, okay, well, we're going through some challenges. It took this other lady's mind off of everything that she was going through. It was nice to be able to give back. And I think I'm going through a difficult time, but if somebody came to me, I want to give that time to them. I don't want it to be seen as crippling and something that means that I'm no longer useful in other ways because I'm going through a rough time. It's so important, and it's something that we can do to really enhance the relationships with those around us and enhance people's lives and enhance our own lives. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'd love to hear any advice or experiences you've had. Please do pop them in the comments. I will also be putting in the description a list of mental health charities that can really help if you are in that situation. Please do go check them out or pop me a message, and I will do everything I can to get you the support that you need. I'm there for you guys, as you are all there for me, I know. I really hope you're all doing well. I will see you on the next episode. But in the meantime, please do stay safe.